In this video I'm going to be showing you how to perform a preventative maintenance on a treadmill. Specifically, this one's going to be focused on land ice. It's generally going to be about the same no matter which manufacturer you're working on, but that will be for a different video. So the first step that you're going to want to do is to remove your cover here. That'll just be a few basic screws, and you can see we've already taken that off, and all you need is a Phillips head screwdriver. And you're also going to want to make sure that you have your PM checklist that we sent out to you. Next thing you're going to want to do is take the power off the machine. You can do that here at the switch, or you can unplug it at the machine. You can also just go and unplug it at the wall. But for now, we're just going to power off at the machine, flip the switch to the off mode. Now you can go ahead and grab a flathead screwdriver, and what we're going to do is just remove the commutator cover right there. There's one in the front and there's one in the back of the motor. Just remove those will pop off, and that will give you access to the commutator brush. I'm just going to pop those out. There's going to be clips in there that hold them. Don't lose those. And take that out in the back. And then you can grab a light and look inside. There's going to be a copper wheel on the inside, which is the commutator, and you're going to be looking for black carbon buildup. If you see any, like there is here, we have a little bit even on our floor model. All you're going to need to do is grab a commutator stone. We have those in our toolbox. You can also buy them online. Just pull out one of those stones and put it in place of the commutator brush. You're not going to need to jam it in there or force it in there. Just put it up against there so it can lightly scrape against the copper commutator wheel. Now all you need to do is give the motor a little bit of a spin to scrape the commutator wheel up against the stone, and you can do that here at the flywheel. You can spin it manually, or you can just take the entire treadmill belt and move that, and that will spin the commutator wheel as well. And so what the commutator stones do is they remove the carbon buildup that gets on the copper commutator wheel. And then once that's done, you can take a vacuum cleaner or canned air or something like that and blast out any of the dust or debris that came from the commutator wheel or the commutator stone. You can also start getting a vacuum and start cleaning out the entire area there. And then just make sure everything's all cleaned out and ready to go. Another thing that you can do while you're down here is clean off the pivot shaft that leads from the elevation adjust motor. All you need to do to clean that is you can take a rag with degreaser or a scoring pad and scrub away at it and make sure that that's all clean. And then again, vacuum everything out that falls off from there. So now we're just going to put back in our commutator brushes with their clips and put the covers back on. Don't forget there's one in the front and there's also one in the back. Those should just snap back on. Now that that's done, with the power still off on the machine, we can come over and check belt tension and the belt condition. You want to make sure first to check belt tension and make sure that the condition's alright. So if you go under and slide your hand under, you want to make sure that you have a smooth surface on the bottom of the treadmill and you have a textured surface on the tread, on the belt itself. You also want to feel around and make sure there's no cracks or anything, and there's no dents in the base of the treadmill. Make sure that the deck is all in good condition. And then to check belt tension, what you want to do is slide your hand underneath the treadmill. Now this is going to vary for some people, but generally you can stick your hand under the belt of the treadmill between the deck and the belt, and you want to make sure that there you can get your hand about 3/4 of the way under the belt. Like I said, that's going to vary from person to person. And then the next thing you're going to want to do is go around on the treadmill belt and make sure that there's no cracks or separation or anything, especially here at the seam. You want to make sure that there's no separation. You want to make sure that nothing is dried out or cracked or damaged in any way. So now coming back up to the front of the treadmill, we can begin to re-grease our pivot shaft and pivots. For the pivot shaft, we're going to use Park Tool Polylube 1000. And then for the actual pivots themselves, we're going to use just a small bottle of Tri-Flow. Just shake it up and apply it to the pivots. So what that Tri-Flow is able to do is it just gets into the small areas of the pivots just a little bit better than a grease can. So now what we're going to be able to start doing is some electrical diagnostic work. What you can do is we're going to power on here at the switch again. The first sign is that you have 3 LED lights there glowing green. They glow green on land ice. What we're going to do now is get out our voltmeter, and we're going to hook this up to a wire. You want to set it to read amps, and then we're going to attach it to our lead wire here. On land ice it is brown, but like I said before, this can vary just a little bit from model to model and manufacturer to manufacturer, but land ice treadmills are a brown wire. So we're going to be looking for a reading, and you're going to want to place that down so that you can see it when you're standing on the treadmill. Now that we're up here, we're going to want to put the treadmill up at 3 miles an hour. And then once the treadmill gets up to that 3 miles an hour, you're going to want to take a reading without anyone on the treadmill. This one specifically is reading 1.1 to 1.14, which is a good reading for no one being on the treadmill. Then you can just step onto the treadmill and start walking on it and take a reading. While you're walking on it, this one's reading between 1.8 and 2.3 amps. That's a pretty good sign. A bad reading would be around 5 amps and above. That means that you either need to apply lube or replace the belt and deck because something's damaged there. Now while we're up here on the treadmill, you're going to want to bring the speed back down to 0. You're not going to want to be walking on it or anything. And on the PM checklist it says now that we're going to go into diagnostics. We want to get the mileage and the hours of runtime for the treadmill. And on land ice, is the way that you do that is you press enter and hold that and press the start button for 3 seconds at the same time, and that will bring up diagnostics on the console. What this is going to show you is the mileage that you run on the treadmill for and the number of hours for its runtime. It's also going to give you feedback for all the buttons on the console. So while you're in diagnostics, you can just press buttons on the console and it will give you feedback for what's working and what's not working. Most of the time it should be working, but you can get an idea of where the problem has occurred with electronic equipment here. And like I said before, the diagnostic screen will give you a feedback for each button when you press it. Now we're going to come up back to the front of the treadmill here, and if you had checked the belt tension before, now you're going to be able to check to make sure that there's no slipping on the belt. The way you can do that is add resistance to the belt while it's running. You're also going to want to toggle up and down the elevation adjust motor, and just to spread the grease around there and get the lube into the pivot shafts. You're also going to want to check the drive belt tension and wear. Make sure nothing's wrong with the drive belt. You're going to make sure that it's not cracked or damaged in any way or torn. There's not much that you can do with the drive belt here unless it's squeaking or squealing or anything like that. What you're going to want to do is take wax and just apply a very light coat to the underside of the drive belt. That's about the only thing you're going to be able to do with the drive belt without replacing it. Next thing we're going to do is come over here and check for the condition and function of our drive shaft and bearings up at the front here. The way that you can do that is stick a screwdriver into the access port for the axle on the front drive shaft, and what you can do is put your ear to the end of the handle on a screwdriver and listen for what's happening through the axle. That'll give you a good idea of what's happening in there. You're going to want to make sure you have a quiet bearing, and if you hear any kind of clicking or anything like that, it's a pretty good indication that those bearings in the drive shaft need to be replaced sometime soon. Now we can go back to the back of the treadmill here, and we're going to check for the tracking of the belt, make sure that it's centered on the rollers. What you can do here is sometimes with land ice treadmills, if you run it at a higher speed without anyone on it, they will self-correct and adjust back to center, but sometimes you're going to need a tool. These can be Allen wrenches or a socket, but on land ice treadmills specifically, it's a 9/16 socket. And the best way to do this is the side that the belt is more biased towards. You're going to want to tighten that side, and it's going to be on the sides of the deck at the end, and you're only going to want to go about a quarter turn each time because you're only just going to be micro adjusting these and making sure that the belt gets back to center without too much adjustment. And like I said before, you're going to need a tool. This can be Allen keys, it can be sockets, but with Landis treadmill specifically, it's a 9/16 socket. Now we can get back up onto the treadmill, and the final step here in the preventative maintenance is to make sure that everything's fastened down and secured. You're going to want to put some pressure on the arms here, especially on this crossbar here. That can come loose sometimes, and if anything is loose, just go and pull the covers off and tighten it. You're also going to want to stomp around on the deck a little bit and make sure everything's tight.